The first time Lena saw the royal army approaching her village, she knew her carefully constructed life was about to shatter. She had spent 23 years blending into the background, working at the village healing house, keeping her head down and her nature hidden. Omegas like her were supposed to be meek, compliant, forgettable. She had perfected the art of being invisible, even as something wild and powerful stirred beneath her skin every time the full moon rose. Her parents had died. When she was 5, their deaths ruled an accident, though the whispers in the village suggested otherwise. Her grandmother had raised her in secret, teaching her to suppress the strange luminescence that sometimes emanated from her skin, to hide the way animals approached her without fear, to never ever reveal what she truly was. When her grandmother passed 2 years ago, she took most of her secrets to the grave, leaving Lena with fragments of warnings and a silver pendant that grew warm against her chest whenever danger approached. Now that pendant was burning like a brand as 50 armed soldiers marched through the village square, their armor bearing the crimson wolf insignia of the Alpha King himself. Lena pressed herself against the wall of the healing house, her heart hammering as the captain, a scarred beta named Corvus, began reading from a royal decree. His voice carried across the frightened crowd gathered in the square, mothers clutching children, men stepping protectively in front of their families. The king demands the immediate surrender of the Omega female Lena Thorne, age 23, brown hair, silver eyes, residing in the eastern village of Millbrook. She is wanted for crimes against the crown and must be brought to the capital for judgment. Any who harbor or assist her will be considered traitors and dealt with accordingly. Lena's blood turned to ice. Crimes against the crown? She had never even been to the capital, had never done anything. That would draw royal attention. She was nobody, nothing, just an Omega healer who grew herbs and tended to minor ailments. The villagers were already looking around nervously, and she saw old Marcus, the blacksmith, glance toward the healing house with barely concealed worry. She had maybe minutes before someone revealed her location, whether out of fear or the promise of reward. She slipped through the back entrance, grabbing only her grandmother's journal and a small pouch of silver coins, before running toward the forest that bordered the village. Behind her, she heard shouting, the thunder of boots on cobblestones, Corvus barking orders to search every building. The forest had always called to her, the ancient trees whispering secrets she could never quite understand. And now she plunged into their shadows like a drowning woman reaching for air. Branches tore at her simple dress. Roots seemed to shift beneath her feet to help her find purchase on the steep incline. She ran, deeper than she had ever dared, past the marked trails and into the old growth where even experienced hunters feared to tread. The trees here were massive, their trunks wider than houses, their canopy so thick that only scattered beams of afternoon light penetrated the gloom. She could hear the soldiers crashing through the underbrush behind her, their numbers and training giving them confidence even in this forbidden place. Lena's lungs burned, her legs screaming in protest. But she pushed, forward, until she burst into a clearing she had never seen before. In its center stood a circle of standing stones, weathered and covered in moss, with symbols carved into their surfaces that seemed to pulse with faint light. She had no time to wonder at their meaning, because the soldiers emerged from the tree line, forming a semicircle that cut off any escape route. Corvus stepped forward, his sword drawn but held low, his expression not cruel but resigned. "Stand down, Omega. The king wants you. Alive. But my orders don't require you undamaged. Come quietly and you'll be treated fairly." Lena backed toward the stones, her mind racing. She had no combat training, no weapons, nothing but the strange power she had spent her whole life suppressing. The pendant at her throat was so hot now it was painful, and she could feel something building inside her, a pressure like a dam about to break. She looked up at the sky, at the sun beginning to set, and saw the moon already visible in the darkening blue, pale, and nearly full. Without thinking, without planning, she reached for that wild power she had always feared, and something inside her answered. The change was immediate and overwhelming. Silver light exploded from her skin, so bright the soldiers cried out and shielded their eyes. But this was not just light. It was solid, tangible, forming a dome around her that hummed with ancient power. The moonlight itself had descended from the sky, wrapping around her like a protective embrace, forming a shield that shimmered with opalescent energy. Corvus recovered first, signaling his men forward, and they attacked the barrier with swords and magic, but every strike simply dissipated against its surface like waves against a cliff. Inside her sanctuary, Lena fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the power flowing through her, feeling connected to something vast and eternal, hearing voices in a language she somehow understood. Daughter of the moon, awakened at last. The blood of the celestial guardians runs true in you. Rise, child of light, and remember what was stolen. The soldiers redoubled their efforts, and Corvus himself channeled his beta magic into a concentrated blast against the shield, but it held firm. Lena could feel their fear turning to frustration, could sense more reinforcements coming through the forest, and she knew this standoff could not last forever. She pressed her hands against the inside of the barrier and felt it respond to her will, expanding, outward in a pulse that sent every soldier flying backward, tumbling across the clearing. Before they could recover, she poured everything she had into the shield, commanding it to hold them back, and then she ran. The barrier remained in place even as she fled, buying her precious minutes as she crashed through the forest on the opposite side of the clearing. Behind her, she heard Corvus shouting orders to circle around, to send word to the king that the Omega possessed forbidden lunar magic, that she was far more dangerous than anticipated. She ran until full darkness fell, and she could run no more. Finally collapsing beside a stream in a ravine so deep and hidden, she prayed they would not find her. Her dress was in tatters, her feet bleeding, and she was shaking with exhaustion and shock. She had used magic, real magic, something she did not understand and could not control. The stories her grandmother had told her suddenly felt less like fairy tales and more like hidden history. The Celestial Guardians had been the ruling family before the current royal line, blessed by the moon goddess herself with powers over light and healing. They had been betrayed and slaughtered 300 years ago in a brutal coup. Their line supposedly ended. If she truly carried their blood, it explained why the Alpha King wanted her captured. It also meant she was in far greater danger than she had imagined. Lena pulled out her grandmother's journal with trembling hands, opening it by the light of the moon that seemed to shine more brightly on her than on anything else. The pages she had skimmed before, dismissing them as old stories and herb recipes, now revealed themselves differently. Hidden text appeared in silver ink, visible only under moonlight, and she began to read the truth her grandmother had protected her entire life. Your mother was the last true princess of the celestial line, my daughter, who I helped escape the final purge. She fell in love with your father, a warrior who protected her, and together they tried to live in peace. But the current king's grandfather discovered her identity and had them killed, though not before they hid you with me. You are the rightful heir to powers that could reshape this kingdom, but you are also a threat to a throne built on genocide and lies. The Alpha Kings have ruled through fear and strength, but their line is cursed, payment for the innocent blood they shed. Only a child of the moon can break that curse, which is why they hunt you, to use you, and then destroy you. The next days were a blur of running and hiding, using her newfound connection to moonlight to conceal herself in shadows during the day and travel at night. She learned to pull the light around her like a cloak, bending it to make herself invisible to searching eyes. She discovered she could communicate with the nocturnal creatures of the forest, asking ravens and owls to watch for soldiers, requesting wolves to cover her trail. Every night, the moon grew fuller, and her powers grew stronger, but so did the exhaustion that came with using them. She was untrained, working on instinct alone, and she could feel herself burning through her own life force to fuel magic she did not fully understand. She needed help, needed someone who could teach her, but everyone who might have known about the Celestial Guardians was long dead. On the 7th night, as the full moon rose enormous and silver above the mountains, Lena made a mistake. She had been following the stream northward, hoping to reach the borderlands where the king's authority was weaker, when she emerged from the forest onto a cliff overlooking a vast valley. In that valley, blazing with torchlight, was a military encampment of staggering size. Hundreds of soldiers, dozens of supply wagons, and at its center, a command tent flying the royal standard. She had stumbled directly into the path of the main army, and even as she began to back away, she felt it. A presence so powerful, it made her knees weak, an alpha aura that pressed against her like a physical weight. She turned to run, but found her path blocked by a figure who had not been there a moment before. The Alpha King Damien stood before her, and he was nothing like she had imagined. The stories painted him as a monster, a tyrant who had expanded his territory through conquest and brutality, who executed dissidents without trial and ruled through fear. Looking at him now, she saw a man perhaps 30, years old, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold shadows. He was handsome in a harsh, dangerous way, but it was the exhaustion in his face that surprised her. The tension around his eyes that spoke of pain held rigidly in check. He wore simple traveling clothes rather than royal regalia, and his hands, though they did not reach for the sword at his hip, were scarred and marked with what looked like burns that glowed faintly red in the darkness. "So you are the one who has led my armies on a chase across half the kingdom," he said, his voice deep and rough. "The Omega with moon magic who should not exist." Lena summoned her power, feeling moonlight gather around her hands, ready to fight or flee, though she knew she likely could do neither against an alpha of his strength. "Stay back. I don't know what lies your people told you about me, but I've committed no crimes. I just want to be left alone." Damien's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been regret or pain. "I cannot do that. I need you, though not for the reasons you think. That curse your grandmother's journal mentioned, it is real, and it is killing me. Without your help, I will lose myself entirely within the month, and when I do, the beast I become will slaughter thousands." She wanted to laugh at the audacity of it, at the idea that she should care about his fate after he had sent armies to hunt her, after his family had murdered hers. "You expect me to sympathize with you? Your grandfather killed my parents. Your family destroyed the celestial guardians and built your throne on their bones. Whatever curse afflicts you is justice, not tragedy." His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might strike her, might give in to the violence everyone said defined him. Instead, he did something that shocked her more. He dropped to one knee, his head bowed, his hands open and empty. "You are right. Everything you say is true. My family's crimes are beyond forgiveness, and I have added my own atrocities to that legacy. I do not ask for your mercy or your sympathy. I am asking you to save the innocent people who will die when I lose control. The curse does not simply kill me. It transforms me into a mindless creature of rage that cannot be stopped or reasoned with. The last time I partially transformed, I destroyed 3 villages before my generals managed to contain me. Next time, there may be no containing it at all." Lena stared at him, her mind reeling. She had expected threats, violence, arrogance. She had not expected this raw honesty, this admission of guilt. She could feel the mate bond between them now that they were close, could feel her Omega instincts screaming at her to comfort him, to ease his pain. She shoved those feelings down ruthlessly. The mate bond was biology, not destiny, and she would not let it override her judgment. "How do I know this isn't a trick? How do I know you won't use me to break your curse and then kill me like your family killed mine?" He raised his head, meeting her eyes, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Desperation, yes, but also a terrible self-awareness, a loathing that was turned entirely inward. "You don't know. I cannot give you guarantees or promises that mean anything. I can only tell you that the advisors who urged me to capture you, who called you a threat, have been feeding me lies for years. I discovered today that they are the descendants of the generals who orchestrated the original coup, and they have been manipulating me to maintain their own power. They wanted me to kill you, to eliminate the last celestial heir. Instead, I executed them for treason, and came to find you myself." Before Lena could respond, could process this revelation, the camp below erupted into chaos. Shouts of alarm rang out, and she saw soldiers scrambling as figures in dark cloaks attacked from multiple directions, their magic crackling with sickly green energy. Damien was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from supplicant to warrior king. The corrupted covenant. They have been trying to destabilize the kingdom for months, and now they strike while I am away from the capital. He looked at her, conflict clear in his expression. I have to go. My people need me. But Lena, please, think about what I have said. Meet me in 3 days at the old celestial temple in the Silverwood. I will come alone and unarmed. Hear the full truth, and then decide. He started to turn away, then paused. And if you choose not to help me, I will not hunt you again. You have my word, for whatever that is worth. Then he was gone, moving with inhuman speed down the cliff face toward the battle. Lena watched as he entered the fray, saw him fight with brutal efficiency, but also with clear purpose, protecting his soldiers, pulling wounded fighters to safety even as he cut down attackers. This was not the mindless tyrant of the stories, but it was also not enough to erase the blood on his family's hands or the terror his reign had caused. She slipped away into the forest, her mind churning with impossible choices. Every instinct told her to keep running, to get as far from Damien and his cursed bloodline as possible. But she had seen the burns on his hands, had felt the wrongness of the magic afflicting him, and some healer's instinct in her recoiled at turning away from someone in such pain. More than that, she had seen the attack on his camp, had felt the wrongness of that green corrupted magic, and she knew that forces were moving in the shadows that threatened more than just her or the king. The Silverwood Temple was a 4-day journey north, and Lena spent those days wrestling with her decision. She used the time to practice her magic, to read more of her grandmother's journal, to try to understand the full scope of what she was capable of. The celestial guardians had not just been powerful. They had been healers and protectors, using their gifts to nurture rather than destroy. Her grandmother's notes described techniques for channeling moonlight to cure diseases, to accelerate healing, to cleanse corruption from magic itself. If what Damien said was true, if he was cursed by the sins of his ancestors, then perhaps her power could break that curse. But should she? Did he deserve salvation? Or was his suffering the universe balancing scales long tilted toward injustice? She reached the temple on the morning of the 3rd day, and found it both beautiful and heartbreaking. The structure was ancient, built of white stone that still gleamed despite centuries of neglect, with a domed roof open to the sky and columns carved with phases of the moon. Inside, murals depicted the history of her people, celestial guardians standing beside the moon goddess herself, healing the sick, defending the innocent, ruling with wisdom and compassion. But many of the murals had been defaced, scratched out, or painted over, evidence of the purge that had tried to erase her family from history. She spent hours exploring, finding a library with intact books written in the old tongue, which she found she could read as easily as common language, as though the knowledge had always been sleeping in her blood, waiting for activation. Damien arrived exactly at sunset, as the first stars began to appear. He came alone as promised, wearing no armor and carrying no weapons visible. Though Lena suspected an alpha, of his power hardly needed steel to be dangerous. He stopped at the temple entrance, waiting for her permission to enter the sacred space, and she felt a small measure of respect for that restraint. She gestured him inside, and they sat across from each other in the central chamber, moonlight beginning to filter through the open dome above them. For a long moment, neither spoke, the weight of history and blood and fate heavy between them. Finally, Damien broke the silence. "Thank you for coming. I was not certain you would." Lena kept her expression neutral, though her heart was racing. "I want the truth. All of it. Why does this curse exist? How do you know I can break it? And why should I believe anything you say when your family has done nothing but lie and kill for 3 centuries? Damien nodded slowly, as if he had expected nothing less. The curse was spoken by the last celestial queen as she died. My great-great-grandfather's sword in her chest. She said that the bloodline that spilled innocent celestial blood would never know peace, that each generation would be consumed by the beast within, that only when a true heir of the moon chose freely to forgive could the curse be broken. My great-grandfather went mad in his final years, tearing apart his own advisors in fits of rage. My grandfather became paranoid and violent, seeing enemies everywhere. My father lasted longer, But the curse took him too, and before he died, he nearly destroyed the capital in his transformed state. He held up his hands, showing her the glowing burns more clearly. I have been fighting it since my 20th birthday. It starts as rage I cannot control. Then my body begins to change, to twist into something monstrous. I have learned to channel it into conquest, into battle, convincing myself that I was building a stronger kingdom. But the truth is, I was becoming the monster the curse intended, hurting people to exhaust the beast so it would not emerge fully. 3 months ago, I lost control during a border dispute and slaughtered an entire diplomatic delegation, including children. That was when I knew I could not contain it much longer. When I began searching for alternatives, my advisors told me that killing the last celestial heir would break the curse, that your bloodline owed us a life debt. I nearly believed them until I found ancient texts they had hidden, texts that told the truth about the curse and about what my family had done to yours. Lena listened, watching, his face carefully for any sign of deception. She could feel the curse on him now that she was looking for it, could see the way shadow and red light writhed beneath his skin like a living thing trying to claw its way out. It was agony, she realized, constant unending pain that he held in check through sheer will. And despite everything, she felt her healer's heart ache at the sight. That still doesn't explain why you think I would help you. Forgiveness cannot be compelled. And you have given me every reason to hate you. Damien met her eyes, and she saw no manipulation there, only weary honesty. You are right. I offer you nothing but the truth and a choice. If you walk away, I will not stop you, will not hunt you, will use what time I have left to prepare the kingdom for what comes after I fall. But if you choose to help me, if you choose to try to break this curse, I will give you everything. I will restore the celestial guardians to their rightful place in history. I will hunt down every conspirator who profited from your family's destruction. I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for the sins committed in my family's name. Not because I expect forgiveness or redemption, but because it is what should have been done centuries ago. Lena stood, pacing the chamber, her mind warring with her heart. She moved to one of the intact murals, studying the image of a celestial healer placing glowing hands on a sick child, moonlight swirling around them both. This is what we were meant to be. Healers, not executioners. Protectors, not weapons. If I help you, it will not be for you or your kingdom. It will be because allowing the curse to consume you would mean more innocent deaths, and I will not have that on my conscience. Damien stood slowly, hope and disbelief mixing in his expression. Does that mean you will try? Lena turned to face him, drawing herself up to her full height, though she barely reached his shoulder. I will try, but understand this, Damien. Breaking the curse will require me to channel enormous amounts of celestial magic directly into you to burn out the corruption at its source. It will be agonizing for both of us, and there is no guarantee it will work. More than that, I will not forgive you simply because the magic requires it. Forgiveness must be earned through action, through real change. If I sense any deception, any hint that you are using me, I will stop immediately, and you can face your fate alone. The ritual took 3 nights to prepare. Lena spent the days studying the ancient texts, learning the healing techniques her ancestors had perfected, practicing channeling larger and larger amounts of moonlight until she could hold it steady for hours. Damien helped however he could, clearing the temple, gathering the materials she needed, all while the curse visibly worsened. The burns on his hands spread up his arms. His eyes began to glow red at random moments, and she could hear him pacing at night, fighting, battles against his own nature. On the second night, she found him standing in the temple courtyard, his whole body shaking with the effort of maintaining control. Without thinking, she approached and placed a hand on his arm, channeling just a trickle of healing light into him. The relief on his face was immediate, the red glow fading from his eyes, his breathing steadying. For a moment they stood like that, connected by her power and the mate bond neither had acknowledged. And Lena felt the depth of his pain, the weight of guilt and self-loathing he carried every moment. Why do you hate yourself so much? She asked quietly. Not for your family's sins. That I understand. But there is something more. Something personal. Damien was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. But finally he spoke, his voice raw, because I enjoyed it. The conquests, the battles, the fear I inspired. I told myself it was necessary, that I was building a stronger kingdom. But the truth is, the curse fed my worst instincts and I let it. I became a tyrant because it was easier than fighting what I was becoming. The people I hurt, the lives I destroyed. I cannot blame all of that on the curse. Some of it was simply me, choosing power over compassion, choosing fear over trust. I look at what the celestial guardians were, what you could become, and I see everything I failed to be. Lena absorbed this, understanding him better, and hating that understanding. It would be simpler if he were simply evil, simply a monster. Instead, he was a man shaped by inherited trauma and dark magic, who had made terrible choices, but was now trying, however imperfectly, to do better. On the third night, under the full moon, they began the ritual. Lena had Damien lie in the center of a circle she had drawn with crushed moonstone and silver dust, ancient symbols of purification and renewal surrounding him. She knelt beside him, placing her hands over his heart, feeling the curse coiled there like a serpent, around his soul. "This will hurt," she warned him. "You will want to make me stop, to transform and fight. You cannot. You must hold on to your humanity through all of it, or the curse will consume us both." Damien nodded, his jaw set. "Do what you must. I trust you." Lena called the Moonlight, and it answered with a fury and power she had never experienced, pouring down through the open dome like a waterfall of liquid silver. She channeled it into Damien, and his scream of agony echoed through the temple. The curse fought back, red and black energy erupting from his skin, trying to corrupt the celestial magic she was feeding into him. She gritted her teeth and pushed harder, feeling her own energy draining rapidly, burning through her life force to fuel the cleansing light. Hours passed in a haze of pain and power. Moonlight battling corruption. Lena's determination against the curse's malevolence. She could feel Damien struggling beneath her hands, his body trying to transform, bones shifting and muscles tearing as the beast tried to emerge. She poured everything into holding him together, into burning away the curse strand by strand. At some point she began to cry, overwhelmed by the suffering she was witnessing and causing, by the weight of 300 years of injustice and pain, flowing through the connection between them. She saw flashes of his memories, his father transforming and attacking him as a child, advisors manipulating him toward cruelty, the moment he realized what he had become and hated himself for it. She saw her own family's history too, felt the echo of her mother's fear as she fled for her life, her grandmother's grief over all that was lost. And then, as dawn approached and the full moon began to set, something shifted. The curse, weakened by hours of assault, began to unravel. Lena felt it breaking apart, dissipating like smoke in wind, and with its destruction came a choice. The ritual required forgiveness, true forgiveness, freely, given. She could feel the magic waiting, poised on the edge of completion or failure, demanding that she decide. Could she forgive this man who had hunted her, whose family had destroyed hers, who had caused so much suffering? Could she look past all of that and choose compassion over vengeance? She thought of the murals, of her ancestors who had been healers first and always, who had believed in redemption and second chances. She thought of Damien's self-awareness, his willingness to change, his acknowledgement of every terrible thing he had done. And she thought of the innocent people who would die if she let the curse win, who would suffer for sins that were not theirs. In that moment, with the first light of dawn touching the horizon, Lena made her choice. She leaned down, placing her forehead against Damien's, and whispered words in the old tongue that came from some deep ancestral knowledge. "I forgive you, not because you have earned it, but because holding on to this hatred will destroy me as surely as the curse destroyed you. I forgive your family's sins because I will not let their evil poison my future. I forgive you, Damien, and I choose to believe you can become someone worthy of that forgiveness." The moonlight exploded outward in a final surge of power, and the curse shattered completely, leaving nothing but clean silver light that slowly faded as the sun rose. Damien lay gasping in the circle, the burns on his skin gone, the red glow in his eyes extinguished, his body finally, blessedly free of the corruption that had haunted his bloodline for generations. Lena collapsed beside him, utterly exhausted, and felt his arms come around her, holding her with a gentleness that seemed impossible from hands that had wielded so much violence. "Thank you," he breathed against her hair. "Thank you. You gave me something I did not deserve, and could never repay." Lena was too tired to respond, too drained to do anything but let him hold her as unconsciousness claimed her. When she woke, it was late afternoon, and she found herself in a bed of soft furs in one of the temple's side chambers. Damien sat nearby, watching over her, and she could see the difference in him immediately. The tension that had always surrounded him was gone, replaced by a calm she had never witnessed. He looked younger, lighter, as though an enormous weight had been lifted. "You slept for almost a full day," he said softly. "I was beginning to worry. But the temple's caretaker spirits assured me you simply needed rest." Lena sat up slowly, testing her body and finding herself weak but whole. The pendant at her throat pulsed with warm light, and she realized it had protected her from burning out completely during the ritual. Caretaker spirits? Damien smiled, and it transformed his face entirely, making him look almost boyish. "Apparently, your presence awakened the temple. There are spirits here now. Wisps of moonlight that tend the gardens and clean the stones. They told me they had been sleeping, waiting for a true heir to return. You have already begun to restore what was lost." Lena absorbed this, feeling the truth of it in her bones. The temple did feel different, more alive, as though it recognized her and was responding to her presence. She stood carefully, moving to the window, and saw that the garden she had walked through days ago, overgrown and wild, now showed signs of celestial influence. Flowers blooming in silver and blue, pathways clearing themselves. Over the following weeks, as Lena recovered her strength, Damien proved true to his word in ways both large and small. He sent messengers to the capital with orders to begin restoring celestial guardian sites across the kingdom, to remove false histories from the archives and replace them with truth. He invited scholars to the temple to learn from Lena, to record the knowledge she carried in her blood. He hunted down the remaining conspirators who had manipulated his family for generations, those who had profited from the genocide and worked to maintain their power through lies. Each execution he carried out with grim efficiency, but he took no pleasure in it, and he made sure every trial was public and fair, that evidence was presented and recorded. He was building a new kind of justice, one based on truth rather than fear. But it was the small things that convinced Lena he was truly changing. The way he listened when she spoke, never dismissing her ideas or talking over her. The way he worked beside her to rebuild the temple, hauling stones and clearing debris without complaint, despite his royal status. The way he encouraged her to develop her powers, to reach out to other Omegas with latent gifts, to begin rebuilding a network of healers that could serve the whole kingdom. He was patient with her wariness, never pushing for more than she was willing to give, accepting that trust would take time to build. The mate bond hummed between them constantly now, no longer suppressed, and Lena found herself drawn to him in ways that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. One evening, 2 months after the curse breaking, they sat together on the temple steps watching the moon rise. Damien had been telling her about his plans to reform the kingdom's justice system, to implement councils of advisors from all castes, rather than concentrating power in the alpha nobility. Lena listened, offering suggestions, challenging his assumptions, and he absorbed it all with genuine interest. When he finished, she turned to him with the question that had been building in her heart. "Why are you really doing all of this? You could have returned to the capital, ruled as you always have. The curse is broken. You do not need me anymore." Damien looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Because you showed me what it means to be truly strong. Not through domination or fear, but through choosing compassion even when it costs you dearly. You had every right to let me fall, to walk away and let the curse take me. Instead, you chose to heal. I want to build a kingdom worthy of that choice, worthy of you." Lena felt her heart stutter at those words, at the sincerity in his eyes. The mate bond surged, and for the first time she did not fight it, did not push away the feelings it generated. Instead, she let herself acknowledge what had been growing between them through all the weeks of working side by side, of learning each other's minds and hearts. "I was so certain I could never forgive you," she admitted. "I spent my whole life hating the Alpha Kings, hating what you represented. Part of me still struggles with it, with reconciling the man you are becoming with the tyrant you were." Damien reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His thumb traced patterns on her palm, sending sparks of awareness through her. "I cannot erase the past or undo the harm I have caused. I can only promise that every day forward, I will strive to be someone worthy of your faith in me, not your forgiveness, because I know that is a gift you have already given and I treasure it beyond measure. But your trust, your partnership, those I must earn with every action." Their first kiss happened not with dramatic flair, but with simple inevitability. Two people who had fought against fate, finally surrendering to what they both wanted. It was gentle and searching, a question and an answer. And when they pulled apart, Lena felt something settle into place in her soul. This was right, not because the mate bond dictated it, but because they had chosen it freely, had built something real through struggle and honesty. That night they made love under the full moon, and it was tender and passionate and healing in ways neither had expected. Afterward, curled together in the moonlight, Damien traced the silver marks that had appeared on Lena's skin during the ritual, permanent evidence of the power she had wielded. "You are magnificent," he whispered. "The kingdom does not deserve you, but if you will have us, we will spend eternity trying to be worthy." The seasons turned, and with them came real change. Lena established the new Celestial Order, a network of healers and lightworkers drawn from all castes, teaching anyone with even a spark of moon affinity to use their gifts for good. The temples were restored one by one, becoming centers of learning and healing rather than monuments to a destroyed people. Damien reformed the royal court, stripping power from the old noble families who had supported the coup and redistributing it to councils that represented all the kingdom's people. It was not easy, and there were attempts at rebellion, conspiracies to restore the old ways, but Lena and Damien faced them together, her light and his strength combining to protect the future they were building. 2 years after the curse breaking, they formalized their bond in a ceremony that blended old celestial traditions with new practices Damien had helped create. It was held at the original temple where Lena had saved him, witnessed by thousands who had traveled from across the kingdom to see their Omega Queen and reformed Alpha King pledge themselves to each other and to the people they served. Lena wore robes of silver and moonlight that seemed to glow with inner radiance, and when she spoke her vows, her voice carried on a wind that smelled of night-blooming flowers and hope. Damien wore simple clothes rather than royal regalia, and his vows were a public acknowledgement of past sins and a promise of better future, not just to Lena, but to every person his family had wronged. Their reign was marked by prosperity and growth, but also by continued challenges. Not everyone accepted the changes easily, and there were those who saw Lena's restoration of celestial power as a threat, but they faced each obstacle together, Damien learning to lead with wisdom rather than fear, Lena growing into her role as both queen and the most powerful healer the kingdom had seen in centuries. They had children eventually, 3 sons and 2 daughters who inherited both alpha strength and celestial magic, who grew up learning that power was a responsibility to serve rather than a right to dominate. And on clear nights, when the moon was full and bright, Lena would stand in the temple courtyard and remember the terrified Omega who had run into the forest, who had called Moonlight to defend herself and accidentally awakened a destiny she never wanted. She had been given the choice to heal or harm, to forgive or condemn, and she had chosen the harder path, the one that required her to be stronger than her pain. Looking at the kingdom they had built together, at the mate who had proven himself worthy of her impossible mercy, she knew it had been the right choice. Epilogue. 10 years later, The Grand Celestial Academy stood on the hill where the old temple had been, expanded and enhanced but still centered. Around that original sacred space, Lena walked its halls with quiet pride, watching students of all ages learning to channel their gifts, to heal and protect and create. The Academy accepted anyone with even a spark of celestial magic, regardless of caste or background, and it had become a symbol of the new kingdom, proof that power shared was power multiplied. She found Damien in the training courtyard, sparring with their eldest son Marcus, who at 13 already showed promise of being a formidable warrior with his father's strength and his mother's strategic mind. She watched them circle each other, saw Damien teaching not just combat but restraint, not just how to win, but when to show mercy. Their youngest daughter, Luna, came running up to Lena with a wounded bird cupped in her small hands, her silver eyes wide with concern. "Mama, can you help?" The bird fell from its nest. Lena knelt beside her, showing her how to channel her own budding power, guiding the child's magic too. Knit the bird's broken wing. Together they watched it flutter away, healed and whole. And Luna's delighted laugh was the sweetest sound Lena had ever heard. This was what they had built. A world where children learned compassion before combat, where healing was valued as much as strength. It was not perfect. There were still injustices to address and wrongs to right, but it was so much better than what had come before. That evening, the royal family gathered for dinner, not in a grand hall, but in the simple quarters they maintained at the academy, preferring to live among the students and teachers, rather than in isolated luxury. Over a meal of roasted vegetables and fresh bread, they laughed and argued and planned. A family not defined by bloodlines or destiny, but by choice and love and shared purpose. After the children were in bed, Lena and Damien walked the temple grounds hand in hand, moving through gardens illuminated by moonlight and celestial lanterns. They paused at the spot where Lena had first channeled her power to save herself, where moonlight had formed a shield and revealed her true nature. So much had changed since that desperate night, but some things remained constant. The moon still watched over them. The bond between them still sang with rightness, and the choice to heal rather than harm still guided their path forward. Damien pulled her close, his arms warm and strong around her, his presence as steady and necessary as earth beneath her feet. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing to save me when you could have let the curse take its course?" Lena looked up at him, seeing the man he had become, the father and king and partner who worked every day to be worthy of the second chance she had given him. "No," she said simply. "You have become everything I hoped you could be and more. Together we have built something beautiful from the ashes of old sins. That is worth every moment of pain, every struggle along the way." He kissed her then, tender and deep, a promise renewed with every touch. And as the full moon rose high above them, bathing the temple in silver light, Lena felt the presence of her ancestors, felt their approval and pride. She had honored their legacy not through vengeance, but through creating a world where such atrocities could never happen again, where power was tempered by compassion and strength by wisdom. The Alpha King who had sent his army to capture her had become her greatest ally, her truest love, and together they were writing a new story for their people, one where light triumphed not through destruction, but through the radical choice to heal. If you love this journey from fear to forgiveness, from darkness to light, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more supernatural romance stories that will touch your heart. Share your thoughts in the comments below about Lena and Damien's transformation, and let us know what other tales of redemption and love you would like to see.